Frick was an uncompromising foe of organized labor, determined to increase profits. Carnegie chose him to run the new concern.
Frick had smashed the unions in his coke ovens at Connellsville, and some people said he meant to do a similar job in Homestead. While negotiations were still ostensibly in progress, Frick had a tall fence built around the mill and erected searchlight platforms around the mill yard. The union men promptly nicknamed the mill Fort Frick. A group of carpenters working on the fence heard a rougher call to one of them. "Do a good job on that fence, Charlie." The carpenter replied, "Ain't it a hell of a note? Like asking a man to dig his own grave."
The great convention of the Amalgamated Association opens today. It is beyond question the most powerful independent labor organization in the world, and every movement of the manufacturers seems to aim at its destruction in the coming conflict.
Homestead's unionized workers were given an ultimatum: sign the company's contract by June 24th, or work in the mill on a non-union basis.
The eyes of the whole world of labor are at present fixed on Homestead. You are entering on a struggle for your rights. If you succeed, the labor of this great country will profit by your success. If you fail, success on their part will be all the harder to gain.
John McLucky took the floor.
The reduction of wages proposed by Mr. Frick means that we will receive from 12 to 42% less. This would mean a cessation of public improvements in Homestead, a material reduction of the prosperity of the town, and in a great many cases, individual hardship. We are asking nothing but our rights, and we will have them if it requires force to get them.
On June 24th, negotiations deadlocked. The following day, Frick wrote a letter to Robert Pinkerton, head of the Pinkerton Detective Agency.
We will want 300 guards for service at our Homestead mills as a measure of precaution against interference with our plan to start the operation of the works again on July 6, 1892.
The Pinkerton Agency was the most effective strike-breaking force in the country. By 1892, Pinkertons had used spies and armed guards to end over 70 labor disputes. So flagrant was their disregard for human life that 11 states had outlawed their employment. Working people feared and despised them. On June 28th, the Carnegie Company shut down the open hearth furnace and the armor plate mill, locking out 800 men. The next morning, the Amalgamated called a mass meeting. Most of the 3,000 who attended were not skilled workers. They didn't belong to the union, but all agreed to stand firm with the locked-out men. Soon, they would have little choice. During the meeting, the company shut the mill down, laying off the entire workforce. Within days, 600 of the foreign-born workers formed their own lodge of the Amalgamated. By 1892, Homestead had become home to an international working class. The expanding mill drew Slovaks, Poles, and other Eastern Europeans, just as it had their British, Irish, and German co-workers. Despite the anti-immigrant sentiments which prevailed in western Pennsylvania, skilled and unskilled, union and non-union, native and foreign-born workers cast their lot together to succeed or fail as one. The Amalgamated appointed an advisory committee to direct the workmen's actions during the lockout. For their spokesman, they chose a charismatic young leader, Hugh O'Donnell.
The committee has decided to organize their forces on a truly military basis. We will be in touch with every city and hamlet in the United States, and will hear the moment a train of men for the mill leaves other cities.
Newspaper reporters and sketch artists converged on Homestead to see if the nation's largest steelmaker and its most militant labor union would come to blows.
The locked-out men are on picket duty at every possible point of entrance to the works. The country is thoroughly picketed and patrolled for 4 miles in every direction. No stranger is allowed to remain in town until his credentials have been proved satisfactory.
We do not propose that Andrew Carnegie's representatives shall bulldoze us. We have our homes in this town, our churches, our societies, and our cemeteries. We are bound to Homestead by all the ties that men hold dearest and most sacred. The Carnegie Company has imported men of all nationalities in places that are east of us, and west of us, and south of us. They never have imported a man into Homestead, and by God, they never will.
A suppressed volcano exists among the American workmen. And someday, there will be an uprising that will become history.
The Reverend J.J. McIllier was Homestead's Methodist minister.
The question is often asked, where would Homestead be without the mills? Why not ask, where would Andrew Carnegie be without the millions he has made from the mills? Capitalists should remember that men do not sell their self-respect when they sell their labor.
Even Ivy Leaguers absorbed in the weekend's Yale-Harvard race followed the events with increasing alarm. 1892 was a presidential election year, and Homestead posed a threat to the incumbent Republican Party. The Republican platform centered around a high tariff policy, supported by both business and labor. If the dispute at Homestead could not be settled to the workers' satisfaction, the party risked losing labor's vote.
July 2nd to the New York Times. The Carnegie Steel Company gave formal notice today that the Homestead mill is to be operated as a non-union plant. The secretary said, any of our old employees may return to work, but they must make application as individuals. All who do not apply will be considered not to desire work, and their places will be filled by new men.
On the 4th of July, Frick sent a coded cable to Carnegie regarding plunge, their code word for Homestead.
Small pond pony plunge, repairing pond pony choke, watchman arrive, plunge morning, board early.
The following day, Frick sent a message to the Allegheny County Jail. He asked the sheriff to send 100 deputies to Homestead to secure the mill for non-union workers. The sheriff feared this would cost him workers' votes. But Pittsburgh's political bosses pressured him to do Frick's bidding. He responded half-heartedly, leaving for Homestead with only 12 men. When the deputies arrived, the town appeared calm and the mill undamaged. The Amalgamated volunteered men to be sworn in as deputies, arguing that the union had a strong interest in protecting the mill. The sheriff refused, knowing this was not what Frick had in mind. Under the circumstances, the advisory committee refused to be held responsible for the mill and formally disbanded. As the committee destroyed its records, the sheriff and his men retreated to Pittsburgh. Within hours, Frick would press ahead with his secret plan for the 6th of July. At 10 o'clock that night, Pinkerton guards from New York and Chicago boarded trains for Ohio. They continued to the outskirts of Pittsburgh, where they boarded barges bound for Homestead. 50 of the 300 men were Pinkerton regulars. Only the officers knew what lay ahead. At 2 a.m., men standing watch downriver spotted the barges as they entered the locks. One man set off on horseback to warn the townspeople, while the others telegraphed ahead.
Homestead, Pennsylvania, July 6, 1892. Like the trumpet of judgment blew the steam whistle of the electric light works. It was the signal for battle, murder, and sudden death. Not one of the thousands who heard and leaped from their beds to answer its signal dreamed of how much blood was to flow in response to its call. There was no method, no leadership apparent. It was the uprising of a population. Not men alone, but women too. Women armed with clubs as they joined the throng which streamed up the tracks, picking its way with a light-footedness born of long practice over the ties. The leader of the women, a white-haired old beldam who had seen 40 strikes in her long life, strode to the front and brandished the hand billy which she always keeps about her house for just such emergencies. Clear as a bell, far above the roar of the angry crowd, came the voice of Hugh O'Donnell as, hatless and coatless, he tried to check the angry men.
In God's name, my good fellows, keep back! Don't press down and force them to do murder!
But the crowd surged forward. Frick's wooden fortress crumbled like paper, and hundreds rushed onto the mill site to confront the Pinkertons at the company landing. A steelworker's son, Billy Foy, walked brazenly toward the tugboat. Standing on deck was the Pinkerton captain, Frederick Hinde.
Now, men, we are coming ashore to guard these works, and we want to come without bloodshed. There are 300 men behind me, and you cannot stop us.
Come on! And if you come over my carcass!
No one knows who fired first. One bullet struck Billy Foy, another Captain Hinde.
Then for the first time the slouched hats took a hand. A row of rifles gleamed an instant from the side of the shoreward vessel, and in an instant more a sheet of flame ran all along her clumsy hulk from stem to stern. Bad marksmanship has saved 100 lives here today.
Even so, the first volley proved deadly. 2 Pinkertons and 3 steelworkers lay mortally wounded. Dozens more were injured.